The show Glee aired in 2010 and starred Matthew Morrison, Jane Lynch, the late Corey Monteith, and the demon in human skin that is Leah Michele. Glee ran for 6 seasons, spawned a spin-off reality competition show, and became an all-time cultural phenomenon that is still memed to death and talked about to this day. During its 6 seasons, Glee tackled a variety of struggles such as teen pregnancy, eating disorders, bullying, sexuality, and even disability. In season 3, Glee decided, hey, we haven't tackled enough, let's try dealing with neurodiversity. And following in their own footsteps, Glee's attempt at handling sensitive subject like neurodiversity was, well, bad. Embarrassingly bad. Like so Sugar Moda, a character introduced in Glee's season 3 premiere, is a spoiled rich girl with Asperger's syndrome, which from here on out will be referred to by the correct term autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, or just autism, since calling ASD Asperger's sucks. And if you want to know why, check out our video here. Or here. Somewhere. James, put it somewhere. Sugar describes her experience with autism as an excuse to do or say whatever she wants, with no consequences whatsoever.
Sorry, Asperger's.
But you may be thinking of commenting, hey, Ricky, shut the shark up. You're missing the joke. Sugar is not actually Asperger's, she's self-diagnosed. Glee is making fun of self-diagnosed people. Well, for one, thank you for pointing that out, since I, as an autistic person, did not get the joke. Not that that's extremely stereotypical or anything. For two, what if I told you that in making fun of self-diagnosed autistic people, Glee is actually just making fun of autistic people? But real quick, the obligatory self-promotion. Hi there, I'm Rebecca, or Ricky. I'm an autism advocate, sexual assault crisis counselor, and video maker that covers topics such as neurodiversity, disability, and feminism in media. So if that's your thing, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, because apparently only like 7% of my subscribers have rung the bell. So let's fix that. Ring the bell. It really wants to be rung. Now that you've all definitely rung the bell as commanded, let me explain what this video will be and what it won't be. This video won't be a free pass for anyone to say that I have diagnosed them as autistic. You don't get to go around committing atrocities while saying, it's okay, Ribera Bonbon said I'm autistic, so therefore I'm immune to your petty consequences. Why? Because autism is not an excuse for bad behavior, harassment, or world domination. Autism is only an excuse for autism symptoms, and autism symptoms do not include racism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, unaliving, or being an Elon Musk. So if your purpose for self-diagnosing is to do any of those things, or if you're Elon Musk, this video is absolutely not for you. Also, shark you, Elon Musk. This video will be going over what self-diagnosis even is, because a lot of you don't seem to understand the basics, why a person might need to self-diagnose, how to interpret the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, and who should not self-diagnose. Yes, I said not self-diagnose, because some of you fishes are, in fact, abusing it. Did my editor just put in a fish reference? Well, anyway, with all of that said, let's do this thing. Have you ever felt sick and thought to yourself, wow, I feel really nauseous. I think I have the stomach flu. Then congratulations, you've self-diagnosed. Yes, it's literally that simple. Self-diagnosis is a term that's become highly charged on the internet in recent years, mostly on the pages of anyone with any sort of non-visible neurodivergency, and more specifically on the pages of anyone with autism, ADHD, dissociative identity disorder, or DID. All over the internet, you'll find people sharing their experiences with these disorders, and without fail, the comment section will be filled with accusations of self-diagnosis. Hell, I've been professionally diagnosed with autism for half my life, and I still get comments claiming that I'm self-diagnosed, even though my professional diagnosis was made when Adele's Someone Like You was a #1 hit. Oh God, that came out on the radio how long ago? I'm old. But yes, people just assume that everyone on the internet who discusses having these disorders is self-diagnosed. Even after showing professional papers, we are still accused of faking these disorders. This has given rise to something called fake claiming. Fake claiming is the term for when someone is accused of faking a part of their identity, presentation, and/or attributes. This is not exclusive to the mental health community either, as people with physical disabilities such as ambulatory wheelchair users are often victims of fake claiming as well. Yes, not every wheelchair user has zero use of their legs, and some wheelchair users even, get this, walk. Much of this fake claiming comes from a place of anger and not genuine concern or care for the disabled people. No, the people doing the fake claiming are not angry that resources are being taken away from people who actually need them. If that were the case, those people would be upset that anytime a disabled performer loses a role to a non-disabled performer, or they would be speaking out about how underfunded systems are that protect disabled people. But instead, they're just crying about random people who they will never meet in their entire lives. No, the people that cry fake claiming are mad at their own ignorance. When someone's preconceived notions are challenged, that can make them angry. Hell, being wrong can sometimes register in your brain as actual pain. But to all the people crying about fake claiming, if your reason for being outraged is because resources aren't being properly allocated, that makes sense in this situation. But to all those people doing the fake claiming, if your reason for being outraged is because resources aren't being properly allocated, that makes no sense in this situation because self-diagnosed people, whether inaccurate or not, are not being provided with any resources. Resources are only available to those who have professional diagnoses. Now, many people will hear me say that and automatically tell me that they know a guy who knows a girl, who knows a guy, who knows a girl, who knows a guy whose father's cousin's brother's former roommate got the resources without a professional diagnosis. For one, I doubt that you actually know any of these people. Or any people. Especially since you can never provide any names or concrete evidence to support your claim. And for two, even if that was true, your personal experience does not represent everyone. I could claim that I know a person with the exact opposite experience, and who's to say whose claim is more valid? I'll say it's me, you'll say it's you, and in reality, it's me, because I'm an influencer, so my claims obviously have more validity.
I'm famous.
I'm gonna get so many hate comments for that. Heck, I might even leave myself a hate comment for that one. Now, with all that said, to the people who are self-diagnosing, most of you... fishes? I can't even say fine. Now, with all that said, to those who are self-diagnosing, most of you... fishes are also wrong about self-diagnosis too. Let's get into why. Self-diagnosis is wildly misunderstood in its purpose. It's extremely common. I cannot emphasize that point enough, how common it is. But most people don't seem to know why it's a thing. A lot of people appear to think self-diagnosis is an identity you can put on or take off, and others think it's a scam to gain clout online. Both viewpoints lead to problematic people popping up on either side of the autism community. Those who see 2 or 3 TikToks and claim the title of autistic, and those who are professionally diagnosed with autism and constantly on the hunt for fakers of the autism. These are 2 extreme sides of the autism community, and though they are both in the minority, they are equally harmful towards autism acceptance and education. They also ignore the very valid reason why self-diagnosis is often necessary. Yes, I said necessary. There are very real barriers that can prevent people from obtaining or even wanting a professional autism diagnosis. What are some of those barriers? For instance, some countries such as Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and Singapore don't allow autistic people to immigrate. There can be increased discrimination in custody battles, egg donation, and sperm banks. There's even a risk of losing custody of your children. Now, while many of these things are more likely to happen with level 3 autism, or rather autism with significantly high support needs, these forms of discrimination do exist and must be acknowledged. These are also mainly reasons a person might not choose to be diagnosed with autism because honestly, even if you wanted it, getting an autism diagnosis is clam near impossible for a lot of people. Clam? Seriously? The average cost of an autism evaluation in the US is $2,000. Average. Some evaluations can cost up to $5,000, and the extremely long waiting list typically means a wait of 4 months to 1 year, or in worst case scenario, 3 or 4 years. Disregarding the financial cost of an autism evaluation, there's systemic barriers of racism and sexism to take into consideration. Black and brown children are often misdiagnosed with other disorders such as obstinance defiance disorder, or just labeled as a bad student and left behind by the school system, thus contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline. And as we've talked about many times before on this channel, autistic women are already underdiagnosed due to medical sexism. Add in being black or a brown woman, the chances of getting an autism diagnosis fall drastically. Whether you like it or not, self-diagnosis is a necessary part of the autism experience for many reasons, either due to socioeconomic circumstances or other issues that are honestly none of your business. Self-diagnosis can be extremely beneficial for people who need it because it offers a sense of community, a better understanding of yourself, and a significant reduction in depression and anxiety. Once you understand that you are autistic or even that you might be autistic, you can start experiencing the world through an autistic lens instead of a neurotypical one. And that simple change can drastically improve your standard of living. So, we've established that self-diagnosis is necessary and that it's not going anywhere. That leaves us with, if you have to self-diagnose, how do you do it? But first, a quick word from our sponsors and a meme break. Both were brought to you by our Patreon. Be sure to join the channel so that you can chat with me, maybe interact, choose upcoming content, and even get exclusive access to our Patreon members only podcast, Hyperfixate and Mansplain. If a girl likes a boy, she should just tell him. Yes, girls should not expect boys to take a hint and make a move. Also, boys, I like you. What? Why? Is this a prank? Are you sure? System error. High functioning autism, high self-esteem, contempt for idiots after all these years, not giving a shit about my political oppositions. Finally, I have them all. Except high functioning autism is not a thing. It's not a thing! If adults called you an old soul as a child, that was their polite way of saying, wow, you're only 12 and you've already lost all your serotonin. I never had any to begin with. Noise cancellation isn't enough. I need everyone to disappear. Me. I said we need a new plague way too many times, and then we got COVID. Maybe I'm just gonna social distance myself away from everyone. That sounds like a good idea. And we go back to the video. So, we're going to self-diagnose because we have to for one reason or another. How do we do it correctly? Well, the first step is to research. Now, as someone who started their content creation career on TikTok, I'm not going to say never use TikTok to gain knowledge, because there are actually a lot of great creators on the app who give legitimate information. They're just not very popular. Unfortunately, as with all content creation spaces, it is far easier to go viral with bull shrimp and clickbait than hard research and facts. I'm gonna kill my editor. And while I do blame those influencers, I don't lay the blame entirely upon them. Most of them have good intentions, but are just parroting pop psychology bullshark that they've heard from clickbaity pop psychology websites that are run by actual grifters. I'm not going to list specific people to stay away from, mostly because I don't want people to interpret my words as a go-ahead to send massive amounts of hate. But I will give you some warning signs to look out for when getting your research from TikTokers or any other social media influencers. Number 1, if they don't cite their sources. Where are they getting their information from? Are they interpreting that information correctly? These are things we need to know in order to trust that what they're saying is accurate. Number 2, if they aren't extremely active in the autism community, there's constant change happening in the ways that the world is understanding autism and the autistic brain, and the autism community is more than just one experience. If the influencer is only getting their information from their experience and not interacting with others, especially those with higher support needs than them, it's likely they're just giving biased information. Number 3, if they don't contextualize traits within the diagnostic criteria currently accepted in the DSM. I know, the DSM is flawed, but at the moment it's the best diagnostic tool we have and it should be used. It shouldn't be worshipped as the end-all be-all of diagnoses, but it should be used. And if you're associating a trait that is not currently listed in the DSM, something like pathological demand avoidance, it's important that you specify that though this is not a part of the DSM, it is something that is currently being researched and associated with autism. There, that's how you say it if it's not listed in the DSM. It's that sharking simple. Sorry. Number 4, if they say things like neurodivergent traits, there's no such thing. There are traits of certain neurodivergencies, but there's no such thing as homogenized neurodivergent traits. This is really important for the next step in self-diagnosis, which is, now that we have the handy-dandy autism symptoms at hand, we need to look into our childhood. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disability, which means the brain was formed this way. You're either born autistic or you're not. We're like Lady Gaga. Baby, I was born this way. You don't develop autism by eating too many chicken nuggets or watching too many train videos. So, if you are in fact autistic, the symptoms would have presented themselves in your childhood, and you can look at these symptoms and contextualize them within your childhood development. For example, one symptom of autism that I had that was missed in my childhood was compulsive wandering, otherwise known as elopements.
Always a child bridesmaid and never a child bride. Go on.
For me, these elopements always seemed to happen whenever my mom would leave me alone in the bath for longer than 30 seconds, which led to multiple occasions of my mom hearing the doorbell and finding a neighbor bringing me home buck naked after I was discovered just wandering around everywhere. It's a miracle I survived. That embarrassing anecdote, which is now on the internet forever, is an example of contextualizing within the diagnostic criteria. When I told my psychiatrist that story during my diagnostic process, I thought it was just a silly and funny example as to how I definitely wasn't autistic. I was just weird, and I was a weird kid. Yeah, I was a weird kid because I had autism. As you're going through your diagnostic journey, if you're not finding a significant number of examples that you can use to prove early symptoms of autism, such as delayed or extremely advanced speech or other childhood development milestones, you might not be autistic. And that's okay. Which brings me to the next important part. One thing that seems to be forgotten in the world of self-diagnosis is the concept of differential diagnosis. Part of the process when diagnosing autism in general is comparing your symptoms to other possible diagnoses in order to rule those diagnoses out. There are a lot of disorders that may seem like autism at first, and ruling those disorders out before diagnosing autism is extremely important. You cannot treat borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, or other such disorders the same way as you treat autism, because there really isn't a way to treat autism. The aforementioned disorders have symptoms that can be managed with medication, but for autism, the most that medication can really do is reduce anxiety. Now, before you say anything, yes, you can be comorbid with all of those things and autism at the same time. But it's still important to use differential diagnosis to rule out the possibilities and find those comorbidities if those exist. Autism is not the answer for everything, even for autistic people. The final thing that you should do if you're self-diagnosing is consult people, autistic people. Ask other autistic people to observe you and share your experiences with them and see if they match. It's true that not every autistic person has the same experiences as another autistic person, but there are some that are extremely common experiences for the vast majority of autistic people because, it's almost like we have the same disorder or something. And don't just stop at asking one autistic person. Get involved with the autism community. We are thriving online, and if you're trying to self-diagnose, we're here to welcome you. Ask us. Talk to us. Listen to us. Also, maybe ask an autism specialist. There are plenty within the autism community who won't be able to legally give you diagnoses without you being their patient. And if they try, please run. That's a crime. But an autism specialist can assist you with your research and help you understand what you're looking at within the symptomology and the DSM. Specialists are not a bad thing. They are a very important part of the community, and with good reason. We need them, which brings me to the last part of this video. Yes, contrary to what you may believe, some of you out there should not be self-diagnosing, or at the very least, you shouldn't be stopping at self-diagnosing. There are a multitude of reasons as to why someone might self-diagnose, such as not having the means or access to obtain a professional diagnosis, but I do sometimes see people online who have means and access but still refuse to bother with a professional diagnosis, and I just have to ask, why? Obviously, you don't have to answer, but personally I do think it is kind of a privilege flex on those who can't access professional diagnosis even though they desperately want to. I have this food that you want, and while I could eat it, I won't. I'm just gonna throw it away. For some, it's almost like a slap in the face to see people turning away from seeking a professional diagnosis, and most of the people doing this are privileged, white, lower support needs autistic people, particularly women and feminine presenting people. Now, I am not going to pretend that sexism doesn't play a part here. Medical sexism is real, and there is a disparity between the number of men who get diagnosed and the number of women. The fact that women are more likely to need self-diagnosis does lead to an increase in misogynistic takes online that basically say every girl posting about autism is automatically a self-diagnosed faker. Even you. Me. You, even you. But I have noticed that these people do tend to have the opportunity to get a professional diagnosis and choose not to take it because they assume being a woman means they won't get a diagnosis. Here's the thing though, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Because again, with differential diagnosis being such an important part of the diagnostic process, it could catch something that you may have not even considered, like post-traumatic stress disorder or bipolar disorder, two disorders that require drastically different treatment than autism. Consulting a professional is also important to help counteract confirmation bias, which is where you may, without realizing it, unintentionally ignore information that doesn't align with what you feel to be true. If you feel that you're just autistic, you may not realize there's a comorbidity or different diagnosis that would fit you better.
That sign can't stop me because I can't read.
If you have the means and access to get a professional evaluation, you should. Self-diagnosis should always be a placeholder until professional diagnosis is available because there are tons of other people who are desperate to access the accommodations that you can get with a professional diagnosis. Self-diagnosis is a complex subject that is misunderstood on both sides, and both have flaws in their arguments. Some say that self-diagnosis is causing a decrease in the accommodations and resources available to autistic people, and to them I say, 1, you're probably overestimating the number of resources and accommodations that are available to autistic people.
You get nothing!
And 2, you can only get those resources and accommodations if you have a professional diagnosis of autism. There are also some who say that self-diagnosis doesn't cause any harm to the autism community, and to them I say, look at the amount of self-diagnosed people spreading misinformation about autism online. And while a few bad apples do not represent the whole self-diagnosis tree, we can't deny that those bad apples exist. I don't want to sound like I'm in any way anti-self-diagnosis because I am very much not. I think that self-diagnosis is valid, and according to statistics, it is accurate in diagnosing autism more often than not. Overall, I think self-diagnosis is a net positive, but like all good things, roller coasters, sex, and cheese, it should be handled responsibly and safely. So if you're going to self-diagnose, please do it with as much research and assistance as possible. If you made it this far, welcome to the Patreon shout-out, where we shout out the members of our Patreon. Today we're shouting out Pleasure Toast, who is one of the newer members of our Patreon. Welcome, Pleasure Toast. We are so happy to have you here with us. We hope you enjoy being a part of our community that we are building over on Patreon. And if you want to be the next Patreon shout out, take a look at our Patreon link down below and consider joining the club. We don't have jackets. Actually, we do. These are our Autistic Bimbo merch, and they are available for sale in our shop down below. Because if you're like me, you are all boobs and no brains. Or in autistic terms, all boobs and no trains. I'm hilarious. Thank you so much for joining me to the end of this video. Thank you to my video editor and to my script editor, Julie. I just say shark you. Shark you for all the fish puns. You are literally Satan. I hope to see you all in the next video.